Just like that, Harrison Okene spent almost 20 hours in this cramped space. However, Okene knew that staying here would also lead to death. But he still had the will to survive. He gathered his courage, took a deep breath, and dived into the water.
Hello everyone, I'm Elsie. I don't know if you've heard of the term survivor's guilt. In simple terms, it's a psychological state where a person feels very guilty after surviving a disaster. To help you understand, let me first tell you about a miraculous event. A man trapped underwater, 3 days, but survived. His name is Harrison Okene. How did he make it? What psychological changes did he go through afterward? Additionally, if you were trapped underwater, how could you survive? If you want to find out, keep watching.
Located in the southeast of the Atlantic Ocean, off the west coast of Africa, there's a bay called the Gulf of Guinea. It has very rich oil deposits, and you can see many offshore oil rigs extracting oil there. On May 26, 2013, a day with rough seas, about 20 miles, approximately 32 kilometers, off the coast of Nigeria, a large vessel was operating, with 3 tugboats assisting the large vessel in docking. Tugboats mainly help large ships dock and leave ports without crashing, due to the large ship's high speed, and they assist in docking during bad weather conditions. On this stormy day, around 5 a.m., a tugboat named Jaskin 4 was hit by a huge wave and capsized. There were 12 crew members on board, including a 29-year-old cook named Harrison Okene, who's the protagonist of this story of surviving underwater for 3 days. At around 4 a.m., he woke up to use the bathroom due to an urgent need. Unexpectedly, the ship turned upside down. The ship sank quickly, and seawater rushed in at an alarming speed. At the time, due to frequent pirate activities, everyone locked their doors tightly when sleeping, which became a major obstacle to escape. Seeing the situation in the bathroom, he quickly put on his pants, opened the escape door, and tried to flee. But the water level was rising too fast. The water pressure made it impossible for him to move forward. 3 colleagues ahead of him were trying to swim to the escape door, but it wasn't as simple as imagined. A strong current swept 1, 2, 3 of them directly into the sea. It seemed that the chances of survival were very slim. At this point, he was also swept out by the current. He knew he was close to death, but he found he could still breathe. He was swept into another bathroom. Everything was upside down, indicating that the ship had capsized. It was pitch black around, and the ship had sunk 30 meters to the seabed. He grabbed a nearby sink pipe by feel. Although the bathroom was very small, it at least allowed his head to stay in the little air left in the small bathroom. A search and rescue team quickly began their effort. They located the sunken ship and dropped a marker buoy, and divers went down to search. Unfortunately, they didn't find any survivors at the time, so the rescue operation was suspended. However, when he heard noises outside, he tried to bang on the walls. But due to sound insulation and other factors, no one could hear him. Thus, he spent almost 20 hours in this cramped space. He knew that if he stayed there, he would die. The air in the bathroom was almost exhausted, and his body temperature was dropping from being in the water for so long. But he still had the will to survive. He gathered his courage, took a deep breath, and dived into the pitch-dark water. His move was a desperate gamble. He swam and finally reached another room. Luckily, there was still 1.2 meters of air left, more than before. Although he had solved the oxygen problem, another significant issue was the drop in body temperature. He groped in the dark and found some tools, removed some boards and floating mattresses, and managed to piece together a floating platform. At least it allowed his upper body to stay out of the water, reducing heat loss. Despite this, he was still very cold and hungry, extremely scared and terrified in this small and dark space. During this time, the only thing he could do was think of his family and pray to God continuously. He also smelled a very foul odor and heard various irregular banging noises. Sea creatures eating corpses. After 50 hours, people on the surface thought there were no survivors and called in a deep-sea salvage team to retrieve the bodies of the missing crew members. The salvage work was not easy. The sediment stirred up by the ship on the seabed limited the salvage team's visibility and movement. The salvage team wore cameras, and their colleagues on the surface guided them. In his desperation, he suddenly heard noises from the divers outside. He immediately banged on the wall again. Afraid of missing another opportunity, he gathered his courage and dived down again. He touched a diver, who immediately retreated. Worried that the diver might mistake him for a marine creature attacking, he also stepped back, kept waving his hands. Soon, his colleagues on the surface saw him through the camera. They guided the divers to Okene's room. The divers were shocked to find someone alive at a depth of 30 meters. Although he had some carbon dioxide poisoning and was a bit dazed, his bodily functions were relatively okay. The diver immediately put an oxygen mask on him. They couldn't bring him back to the surface right away. Prolonged exposure to water pressure increases the dissolved gases in the blood. Brought back to the surface too quickly, the gases in the blood could form bubbles, causing joint pain, nervous system problems, and even paralysis or cardiac arrest. So the diver stayed with him underwater, breathing steadily for 20 minutes before slowly swimming back to the surface together. He was immediately sent to a decompression chamber for 3 days. On the evening of May 28th, he was rescued. By then, more than 60 hours had passed since the shipwreck, meaning he had been trapped underwater for nearly 3 days. However, he thought he had only been underwater for 1 night, believing only 12 hours had passed. The media reported this miracle of surviving underwater for 3 days that year. Psychological state. Although he survived, he developed PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. He often had nightmares related to the deep sea, water engulfing him, total darkness, and hearing terrifying marine creature sound. He also experienced survivor's guilt, feeling guilty for being the one who survived instead of others. Frequently showed signs of self-blame, thinking, why was I the one who survived and not someone else? Survivor's guilt and PTSD share similarities as reactions after experiencing major events. But it's important to note that survivor's guilt and PTSD are different. PTSD is defined as a mental illness, while survivor's guilt is a psychological state, also considered a moral injury. Survivor's guilt generally falls into 5 categories. The first type is guilt for what you did. This can include actions like deceiving others or achieving your goals through improper means. Imagine someone who lied to get ahead and now feels an overwhelming sense of guilt for those actions, especially after surviving a major event. The second type is guilt for your thoughts. This involves feeling guilty for even thinking about abandoning companions during a disaster, but being rescued yourself. Picture being in a dangerous situation, and even if only for a moment, thinking about leaving someone behind. The guilt from those thoughts can be as crushing as if you had actually acted on them. The third type is guilt for believing your negligence caused the disaster. This can be as simple as thinking a fire happened because you didn't check electrical appliances properly. It's the if-only syndrome. If only you had double-checked, maybe things would have been different. Fourth type is guilt for not doing enough. For instance, seeing someone in distress but being unable to help. The feeling of helplessness, knowing you were there but couldn't do more, can haunt a person. Finally, the fifth type is guilt for surviving while others didn't. This is the sense that others became sacrifices while you benefited from the same disaster. It's the question of, why me? Why did I survive when others didn't? This category is particularly poignant, reflecting the deep empathy and kindness that many people feel towards others. These types of guilt can cause intense self-blame and sometimes even make a person wish they had shared the same misfortune as others. It's a complex mix of emotions, but it's rooted in human nature, showing how most people are kind and empathetic. How to survive an underwater disaster. If you unfortunately face such a situation, what should you do? How did he miraculously survive? What did he do right? We know that once a person is dragged underwater, survival is difficult. But if you're trapped in a ship's compartment or room, there might be a glimmer of hope. There are 5 steps to remember. Step 1. Swim upward. You might find a large air bubble in the ship or room. It's like pressing an inverted cup into water, where the bottom of the cup still holds air. If the cup can keep the air from escaping, the air will stay in the water, allowing you to survive for a while. Step 2. Look for floating objects. Although you have enough air to survive, your body is still submerged in water, losing heat faster than it generates. The human body temperature is usually around 37 degrees Celsius. Below 35 degrees 95 Fahrenheit, hypothermia occurs. Initially, you'll feel cold and shiver, with decreased blood circulation. Next, you'll feel very tired, with weak breathing and pulse. In the later stages, you'll lose consciousness, leading to death. So, you must quickly find something to keep your body out of the water, just like he did by removing nearby boards to keep his body out of the water and slow down heat loss. Step 3. Continuously slap the water surface. This helps dissolve the carbon dioxide you exhale into the water. After being rescued, it was found that his carbon dioxide intake level was just at 5%. If it had been higher, he might have passed out or died. Slapping the water surface saved his life. Step 4. Preserve your strength. During the whole process, you must conserve your strength, avoiding wasteful physical exertion. Remember, he didn't swim out directly, but waited for rescue. This helps you survive longer underwater. Step 5. Wait for rescue. All you need to do is wait. Whether it's the sound of a boat's engine, a diver's movement, or a diver's voice, it gives you hope. Don't give up easily. Every extra second increases your chance of survival. These are the steps to take if you unfortunately find yourself trapped underwater. I hope this information is useful to you. If you find this video helpful, please give a thumb up and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. See you next time.